On 17 July 2017, around 11:50 p.m. at night, Flight 759 from Air Canada was arriving for landing at San Francisco International Airport. It seemed like a regular landing, just like any other. However, what appeared to be a normal landing was about to take the lives of 140 passengers aboard, as well as thousands of others at the airport. This was one of the most terrifying incidents in the history of aviation, where 5 aircraft almost collided with each other, narrowly avoiding disaster. San Francisco International Airport has 2 runways. The runway was supposed to be closed for maintenance, but due to some other reasons it was closed that night. Unfortunately, the pilots of Air Canada Flight 759 were unaware that runway 28 was closed. Since the pilots had landed at the airport several times before, they assumed that runway 28 and the parallel right side runway were operational. However, the lights for runway 28 were off, and the pilots made a huge mistake. They confused the taxiway lights with those of runway 28, thinking they were aligned with the runway for landing. On the taxiway, several flights were waiting for clearance to take off: United Airlines Flight 1, Philippine Airlines Flight 115, and United Airlines Flight 863. As per normal procedure, an information chart about runway closures was issued, but the pilots of Air Canada Flight 759 may not have fully read or understood the notice. The pilots were given permission to land using a visual approach, meaning they would manually control the aircraft's direction and speed based on visual cues, as the weather was clear that night. This type of landing was considered routine, but such errors where pilots land on the wrong runway or taxiway have occurred before. Normally, pilots use an instrument landing system (ILS) to prevent such mistakes, as it helps guide the plane's navigation system to the correct landing path. In modern aircraft, these systems are automatic, but in the case of Air Canada Flight 759, the pilots had to manually set the ILS, and for some unknown reason, they failed to do so. Additionally, the pilots were exhausted. Both of them had not slept properly in the past 19 hours due to the different time zones of takeoff and landing, and they were feeling fatigued. Normally, airlines ensure that pilots get enough rest, but the airline's rules regarding pilot rest were not sufficient. As a result, they made the critical mistake of confusing the taxiway for the runway. As Air Canada Flight 759 approached the airport, unaware of the danger, it was heading directly toward a potential collision with 4 other aircraft on the ground. Airplanes usually land from the correct direction at San Francisco, so when the Air Traffic Control ATC Tower saw Flight 759 veering off course, they assumed it was just following the normal landing path. No one suspected that the plane was actually heading towards a taxiway. As the flight got closer to the taxiway, the captain of Air Canada noticed some lights and wondered if there was another plane on the runway. To confirm this, he contacted the ATC and asked if there was another plane on the runway. The ATC controller, still assuming the plane was landing on runway 28, assured him that the runway was clear and that he could land without any issues. Normally, each ATC tower has 2 controllers. One controls landings and takeoffs, and the other controls ground movements of planes at the airport. Due to the high volume of flights and ground traffic, the ATC controller could not comprehend the severity of the situation and failed to foresee the impending disaster. The pilot of United Airlines Flight 1, which was parked on the taxiway, was listening to the conversation between the ATC controller and the pilots of Air Canada. The United Airlines captain was also confused as to why the Air Canada flight was so far off the center line of runway 28. As the plane continued to approach, the United Airlines captain realized what was happening. Without wasting any time, he informed the ATC controller that Air Canada was landing on the taxiway. Just seconds before disaster struck, the ATC controller instructed Air Canada Flight 759 to abort its landing and go around. The plane flew just a few meters over the 4 stationary planes, narrowly avoiding a catastrophic collision. This could have been the deadliest aviation disaster in history, with thousands of people losing their lives. Breathing a sigh of relief, the United Airlines captain radioed the ATC controller saying, "Air Canada flight just flew over us." The actual CCTV footage reveals how close the Air Canada flight came to the four planes on the taxiway. Despite the gravity of the situation, federal regulations at the time did not deem this incident serious enough to warrant an investigation. However, following the incident, the former chairman of the NTSB National Transportation Safety Board advised a review of the regulations and called for a proper investigation. Finally, on July 9, 2017, the NTSB began an investigation with the help of the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA). In its final report issued on September 25, 2018, the NTSB concluded that the pilots of Air Canada Flight 759 had failed to read the NOTAM notice to airmen properly, which had informed them that runway 28 was closed. This caused them to mistake the taxiway for the runway. The NTSB also noted that if the pilots had used the ILS along with the visual approach, they would not have made the mistake of confusing the taxiway with the runway. The investigation also pointed out that both the captain and co-pilot were extremely fatigued, which contributed to their failure to assess the situation correctly. After this incident, the NTSB introduced several new rules to prevent such accidents. They mandated the use of ILS with visual approaches at airports where runways are close together, especially at night. They also required two ATC controllers to be on duty at all times to avoid confusion. The incident served as a reminder about the importance of clear communication between pilots and air traffic controllers, and the risks of misunderstandings in such conversations. However, the question remains, was this incident taken seriously enough? Have sufficient measures been put in place to prevent such accidents in the future? This is something worth reflecting on, especially since in 2023, there have been multiple reports of similar runway errors at airports. At New York's JFK Airport, two planes narrowly avoided collision, and the Federal Aviation Administration is currently investigating the case. Though air travel remains the safest mode of transportation in the world, we hope that airlines continue to adhere to safety protocols and ensure that pilots get proper rest during their duties so that they don't make mistakes due to fatigue or drowsiness that could put thousands of lives at risk. If you appreciate the hard work we put into making these videos, please like and subscribe to support us. We are always grateful for your cooperation. Thank you.